Please welcome to the stage Rian Johnson and Joanna Robinson.
Hello. Yeah. Ryan was saying, there's going to be about 10 people here, I think.
Hello.
Hello, everyone.
Thanks for coming.
So I think usually I do the whole, this man needs no introduction sort of thing. But let's just for the record, say who you are.
Please.
This is Rian Johnson. He directed a little film called Brick.
My mother in the audience.
Directed. My personal favorite film, Brothers Bloom.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm one of those. I'm a Brothers Bloom fan. Looper, a little bit of Breaking Bad. And then he returned to your indie roots to do this little film called Star Wars Last Jedi, right?
That's it, yeah. I'm gonna get back to...
Heard of it, right? Yeah. By show of applause, who watched the doc premiere this morning? Okay. So for the rest of you, we're going to spend this panel just sort of acting out the whole documentary, right, for the crowd.
I brought sock puppets, and we're
yeah. I get to be Adam Driver, so you know. Hi, Ryan. How are you doing?
Hey, Joanne. I'm doing good.
Good to see you. So the idea of this is we just sort of wanted to see if there was literally anything else you had to say about Star Wars Last Jedi.
No, I'm good.
Yeah, you're good? We're done? Good night, everyone. And we wanted to talk also a little bit about sort of the process. This is your life leading up to Star Wars and how we all got here. So
strap in, mofos. This is gonna
be good.
No, this will be fun. Yeah.
So let's start, baby Ryan, kid Rian Johnson. What did you watch growing up? What did you love watching growing up?
I mean, the truth is Star Wars, you know, and I think that's kind of one of the really great things about the past few years has been getting to actually meet a lot of Star Wars fans. And it's the folks who come out to Star Wars Celebration, which is it's like Comic-Con, but just for Star Wars. So it's a concentrated dose of all the folks who are really into it. And I think the reason it runs so deep in people is because for so many of us, it started so early. And I know, just speaking for myself as a kid, when your whole creative world as a little kid is enveloped in this one universe of Star Wars, and when the first stories you're telling in your head are in that universe, it instantly kind of jacks into something very primal. And so, for me, it was Star Wars, it was Indiana Jones, it was like all the usual boring stuff that everyone talks about, but that's what it was.
And anything that Lucasfilm didn't pay you to say?
No, nothing. I think that's it. Well,
that's it. And when did you know that you wanted to make movies?
I mean, really, really young. I was writing stories and stuff, and this was back before everyone had a phone that had a camera in it. So it wasn't until in grade school, my dad brought home the very first video camera, one of the very first ones, where you had to plug it into the VCR in order to...
What's a VCR?
Yeah, exactly. It had mechanical buttons. Maybe a few people here remember you had to chunk, and that's satisfying. Actually, levers were moving and iron wheels were turning inside the thing. And
there was a donkey on sort of a.
It took a car battery, if you wanted to carry it around, But yeah, so very early on, I was just always kind of telling stories, yeah.
And my favorite thing about your earliest movie and that whole attitude is you started with a sort of Mickey and Judy, let's put on a show, is what I like to call it, right? Because, a lot of people say that, but your parents financed your first film.
My family did,
Your
yeah,
family.
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What was it like coming hat in hand? How would you tell these people to ask their folks, their family, for money?
Brazenly, just be brazen. Well, no, and I think that's something that, basically I wrote Brick, which is the first movie I made when I was right out of college. So I wrote it when I was 22, and I basically spent my 20s trying to get it made, and didn't actually make it until I was turning 30. So it was an 8-year process of trying and failing through a lot of different methods to try and get money for it.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating because during that time, I would find people who had gotten the first movie made, and I would ask exactly that question: how do you do it? It just seems like there's this unbridgeable gulf between where I'm standing and where you're actually have the money to make a movie. What's the answer? There has to be an answer.
Right.
And they would always give infuriatingly vague answers like, just don't give up and just stay at it and just stick to it.
Yeah.
And I'd, fuck you, how do you make a movie? How do you do it?
Just like Shia LaBeouf, like, just do it,
It
man.
is the Tony Robbins answers.
Yeah,
And I get so frustrated. And now, like, but the God's honest truth is that, you know, there's no way to do it. It is an impossible thing to do, and it's something that really the only advice that does matter is to, you know, have a piece of material that you know and you care about, and then just don't stop until you make it by any means necessary. And now I'm giving the lame general advice, but it's genuinely true. I really do believe that there's a couple kind of Pollyanna-ish things that I do genuinely believe about, you know, everyone, and it is to a certain degree, the film industry kind of a tank of sharks, but there are a few things that I am kind of, you know, Pollyanna-ish with it, and one of them is that if you literally have something you want to make, and you don't stop trying to make it until it gets made, it will get made. One way or another, at some point or another, you will get that thing made. And the other thing is that if you work on, because I know at the beginning, and a lot of young filmmakers, I think, get very focused really quickly on finding an agent,
right,
getting financing,
sure,
breaking in, all the like the business stuff. Yeah. And I don't know, this may sound kind of like pie in the sky-ish, but I really genuinely believe it's like on a practical level true, that's kind of putting the cart before the horse. And if you just focus on making your stuff, even if it's making tiny things that no one's going to see, but you're developing your voice and you're getting better and better at what you do, I really do genuinely believe that the fact that the vibranium, is that from the name of the stuff? Like rather, the vibranium in the movie industry is somebody who makes cool stuff that's interesting that you haven't seen before. And if you can develop your talent to the point where you can do that, it'll happen, I think, you know. And that may sound naive.
No, a million agents just cried out in terror.
Maybe, but I do genuinely believe that for anyone who's making movies, work on your voice. Don't get discouraged. Just keep doing it. Just keep getting better at what you do. Keep watching movies. Keep making movies, and keep putting it out there, you know. Yeah.
But you have these people from your Brick days that you've sort of kept around you, your filmmaking family. You've got Ram Bergman, who produced Last Jedi. If you saw the doc, you might have seen exactly how much he does with budget, for one thing, and everything like that. What is it about your relationship with Ram, who you've worked with for over a decade, that keeps you coming back for more?
Well, that's one thing. I got very, very, very lucky connecting with a really good producer, and that's something that I've just lucked into, and there's no way I would have gotten to make the movies I've made if I hadn't met Ram, because I don't have the part of my brain that can navigate not just the budgetary stuff of how do you put a movie together, how do you produce, but also the industry stuff of how do you position yourself in a place where you can do what you want to do. So if you're not good at that, like I am, finding somebody who is, that you can form a relationship with early on, and that doesn't mean the other nice thing is Ram and I found each other kind of at the right time. It's not like I was at the time calling up like Lawrence Bender or like a super producer saying, can you read my script?
Right.
I found Ram, who he had done a bunch of stuff, but it was like more indie stuff, and so we were kind of at a level where we could really connect and start working together. And God, if you find that, don't let it go. Just hold on to that person.
Keep it tight?
Yeah.
I guess if you were at the documentary screening this morning, you know that Ram is in town. Don't mob him. Like, find your own version of that. Don't accost this man.
No, mob Ram. That would be hilarious.
Yeah. Hashtag mob Ram.
Yeah,
all right.
yeah.
And then your DP, Steve Yedlin, who's worked with you on everything that you've done. You've got this really analog approach to filmmaking. You know, you carry your camera with you everywhere. Yeah. Steve's got like a more like technical, digital sort of vibe. How do these two powers sort of come together?
Well, I've been like best friends since we were 18. We met on the student film set at USC, and yeah, Steve has he's an incredibly artistic guy, but he has a very technical brain. And when I told him I wanted to shoot film on this movie, because Steve is very much now in the digital world and like working with, he's very excited about it. He respected the decision, but then he wrote like a 30-page dissertation on why we should shoot digital and kind of presented it to me. Like he said, just for my conscience to be clear, I want you to read this entire thing. Before I was like, okay. So I read the whole thing. I said, that's amazing. I can't believe you did that. We're shooting film. Yeah. And so, but but Steve also though, it's like him. It's in the rest of his life, he's like this too. He's an incredibly sensitive person, I guess. I don't mean just like puppy dogs. I mean like he reads more than anybody else I know, and he absorbs, and he just gives lots of active thought about how to be a good person, I guess, and he's a good listener. And so when we collaborate, it's us talking about the way because I couldn't tell you where to put a light to save my life. I couldn't light a scene, but I can describe what I want it to feel. I can describe the emotional intent of the scene, and we want it to feel this way because of that. And Steve can listen to all that and then translate it into technically what to do on set. But
so if someone wants to be a Ryan, they have to find a Steve and find a Ram.
I wouldn't. I don't know if I'd recommend anyone be a Ryan. but yes, find a Steve, find a Ram.
Find a Steve, find a Ram.
Yeah.
All right, I want to talk about the movie Looper, and to do so, it would be weird if I sat here and lavished you with praise, right? So I'm going to let someone else do it. I have a quote I'm going to read. Have you heard of someone called Jason Reitman?
I've heard of that.
Yeah.
I know that
little indie director. Okay. So this is what Jason said about Looper. He said, Looper is so deftly told that it's easy to forget how difficult the maneuvers are that Rian Johnson is pulling off with grace and sophistication. His screenplay employs unparalleled structural fluidity, complicated and moving visions of the future, and a language of its own invention that is somehow foreign and yet just in our grasp. So, yeah.
And pretend to drink water.
Yeah. Get over that reaction. So, Looper, which is a very complicated, naughty story. Where did that come from? Naughty with a K.
Naughty with a K.
Yeah.
Looper was something I had the idea for back before I made Brick, actually. And I had Steve and I, during that period in our 20s when we were trying to get Brick made, we realized, my God, we've just been banging our heads against the wall and thinking about nothing but money and how do we get money and how do we get this thing made. And we said, let's get back to what we love and let's just make a couple of shorts, not for anyone to see, just for ourselves. Let's have fun behind the camera. And so we made a few of those, and Looper was something I wrote. We never ended up making it as a short, but it's something I wrote as a short in order to do that. It was made literally to be shot like with my video camera, like on weekends, basically. Yeah. And so, but the basic idea of it started there, and then over the next 10 years or so, I just kind of slowly worked on it in the back of my head and grew it into the movie version.
And you've got Joseph Gordon-Levitt in that movie, in all of your movies. Got Noah Sagan in that movie, in all of your movies, and you even snuck him into Breaking Bad. Mm-hmm. So what is it about those men? I want to call them boys, but they're men now. Those men that you keep coming back to.
Well, they're good friends at this point. You always want to work with your friends, Yeah.
How mad are they that you didn't cast them as Rose Tycho?
Yeah, pretty pissed.
Yeah?
Noah particularly.
Noah would have been perfect.
He would have been really, really good.
Yeah.
But once I found Kelly, I knew it was over for me. We got him in there.
Yeah, he's in there if you look for him. Yeah. He's in there a couple times, yeah. And then so if you guys are you've watched Breaking Bad. Yeah, woo! Exactly. Ryan directed 3 episodes, 51. Fly, which was considered like one of the best Breaking Bad episodes. Until Ozymandias came along in the final season. Actually, Anyway, so my question for you about your work on Breaking Bad, though, and how it relates to Star Wars is, what is it like to step into a TV show and sort of be part of Vince Gilligan's larger Breaking Bad vision. And you have to do something kind of similar with Star Wars, where you're coming in, you're doing The Last Jedi, but you also have to sort of be part of this larger Star Wars universe. Are there lessons you can pull from directing that? Or Terriers, which is one of my favorite FX shows of all time.
Terriers, yeah.
Like directing those TV shows and transplanting that over to your Lucasfilm experience.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I guess in my mind, the big difference with Breaking Bad is just that I didn't write it. And so the episodes that I worked on were written by Moira Wally-Beckett and Sam Catlin combined and then separately. So for me, it was just about coming in and serving the material and just trying to serve that and talk to Vince and get an idea if he wanted. But I mean, what is applicable about it, I guess, is just, I guess I came in expecting that Bryan Cranston and Anna Gunn and all these characters who have been playing their characters for several seasons now, that there was going to be basically nothing I had to tell them, just because how can I know what to tell them to do more than they would with their character? And realizing that that was really not the case, and really quickly realizing that if the writers are doing their job, these characters are being pushed forward into new uncharted territory every week, and they still need direction. They still need an eye on the outside to look and see if it feels right. And that's the same with Daisy, or with, even especially with Mark and with Carrie, coming in and realizing these are guys who know their characters, but we're taking them in new directions, and so you still have to be there to kind of guide it all. I mean, mostly with Breaking Bad, I just feel like I got really, really lucky getting to ride that bus for a few stops.
Well, yeah, I'm going to cheat and skip ahead a little bit and talk a little bit about Star Wars before we get back to something else, which is exactly what you say. You come into The Last Jedi and you are known as an actor's director. You're good with actors. Not every director is, but it's a nice skill to have. But you're working with actors who, like Carrie, like Mark, who have inhabited a role for 40 years. How do you work with them on your vision of where the character should go?
Well, it's just like any other thing, except more so, in that it's a conversation. In this case, it's just a very intense conversation. And it's, you write it, you present it, and then the conversation begins. And in the case of Carrie, that involved, lots of conversations about the specifics of scenes, and her pitching me lots of one-liners. She loved one-liners. She loved jokes. And so pitching me stuff to put in there, talking about just the spirit of Leia. And with Mark, it was a much bigger conversation about the whole kind of shape of the character and where it was going. And it was about his expectations coming into it, and I think the expectation that this would be, much closer to the Luke that was the hero, like his hero's journey in the original trilogy.
Right.
And whereas for me, this is 30 years later, and not only that, this is, if you look at any classic kind of hero's myth that actually is worth its salt. If you look at the beginning of the hero's journey, like with King Arthur, he pulls the sword from the stone. He's ascendant. He has setbacks, but he unites all the kingdoms. He gets all his knights together. Or Beowulf with him, killing Grendel's mother and taking it all down and having that victory and getting his own hall. And there's always that first arc, but then any one of these things that then if you keep reading, and if it then goes past that and deals with the hero's life as they get into middle age and beyond, it always starts to get into, you think about King Arthur betrayed by his, best friend and his wife, and then ultimately, depending on what version you read, coming up against the product of, somebody who has completely usurped his kingdom and the product of incest from him, and he has to kill him, but only at the cost of his own life, and it gets into darker places.
It gets dark, man.
Well,
really
and Beowulf also, and there's a reason for that. It's because myths are not made to sell action figures. Myths are made to reflect the most difficult transitions we go through in life. And that early part of the hero's journey is reflecting I think, is my interpretation, going from adolescence into adulthood, where you're ascendant and you're finding yourself and you're winning. in order for something that addresses middle age and beyond in a really honest way, if you look at the myths, they like the Fisher King, you know, it deals with disillusionment. It feels like starting to feel like you're losing your place in the world. It feels like everything changing and loss. And that's because they're honest, and that's because they have to be honest, because that's what these things are there for, you know. And I feel like it would be a betrayal of them and of Luke Skywalker as a character not to take it seriously enough to reflect that, I think, and to just give us the waxworks version of Luke that we might love and expect, because he's up there and as the action figure in plastic on our wall looking heroic and stuff. But if you want to take him seriously as a character, for me at least, it felt important to go into that realm. So anyway, as you can tell by my 45-minute dissertation on it,
You thought about it a little bit?
I've given it some thought,
Yeah.
but a lot of that thought was because, you know, and to Mark's credit, it was because Mark challenged me on it. And because I had to then articulate this stuff. I had to think it through. I had to get into, this felt right to me, but why did it feel right? And I couldn't just say, screw you, because this is my story, because you can't do that. You know, you have to get into the conversation, and that's nothing but a good thing, you know. So, sorry, long answer to.
No, I think that that's so much of what this documentary is about your relationship with Mark and the understanding that you came to and how it all played out. Sort of, were you watching, you know, we should talk a little bit about this documentary. It's sort of why we're here today. And were you watching it played back to you? Having lived it and then watching it played back to you, is there anything sort of you learned watching the documentary about your working relationship with Mark or your working relationship on the set in general?
I don't know. It was really weird. It was not the relationship, but watching it was really weird. It was like imagine. I mean, just to like backtrack and explain kind of the process of that. So we basically, Ram and I, from the very start, we said we don't want to have just a, you know, B-roll cut with talking heads like promo for the movie documentary. If we're gonna go through this experience, let's get a documentary filmmaker and let's actually get someone in there who's going to have a perspective and is going to dig into the process. Mm-hmm. And so we found Anthony Wonke, who came in, and he's a very good documentary director, and gave him full access, basically. And Ram and I and the actors, we all put on like these things. I wore this, and there's like a big like hunking battery pack on my back right now, and I had that on my back the whole shoot. Every single day they would wire us up so that they could record our dialogue, our actual talking during the whole. Sometimes it gets blurred. You start losing that. What's reality? What's not?
The scripted.
The script.
Director.
Yeah. So they had full access, and they were there every single day for all 6 months of shooting, and they got some extraordinary stuff.
So you're like I'm gonna direct a trilogy, or I'm gonna direct a film in a trilogy, one of the biggest movies ever. Why not make my life a little bit harder and mic myself at all time and have a documentary crew following me around?
Well, it is amazing though how quickly you forget that they're there. You know, amazing and scary. But you forget that they're there because you're trying to just do your work during the day, and they're good at staying out of the way. But being there and capturing it all. So anyway, they I don't know, I guess watching the doc for me, I'm mostly just kind of amazed by the beautiful stuff they got, the degree to which they were able to, and the way that it was all assembled, the storytelling of it, so that you really, I guess the biggest compliment I can give it, it genuinely feels like it did on the set. It makes me feel nostalgic for hanging out on that set.
So those who didn't make it to the screening, this is something that's going to be available for digital release when The Last Jedi comes out on March 13th, and the Blu-ray available March 27th. But should we watch a little bit of footage right now? Do it. Watch it. Allegedly.
We'll see if this works.
So I don't want to freak anyone out, but I think we just made a Star Wars movie.
Action! I just have one goal, which is to make the most powerful Star Wars movie I possibly can.
Once we decided that we were making Star Wars movies, he was one of the people that I was immediately interested in.
I looked into his eyes and I saw conflict.
You have to lay down all your chips in front of a lot of really good poker players.
I trust him. I have to trust him.
Feels really nice to put Luke Skywalker in front of a camera.
I think it's just beginning to dawn the sheer scope of this project, which is enormous.
Beautiful. Good, good, good.
It's really House of Cards. Everything needs to be like so perfect, you know, to get it done.
I got really scared.
Every single decision is personal to him.
The best shot at making something good is to come into it and trust my guts, you know. It's nice, right?
Yeah.
You like it?
I love it.
Good.
So my favorite thing, you know, we won't spoil too much of the documentary if people, you know, spoilers. There's a very important thing in Star Wars. I don't know if you know that, so.
Spoil it all, man.
We won't spoil.
Burn it all. Come on. Come on.
We won't spoil too much of the documentary for those of you who haven't seen it, but my favorite part, and I told you this backstage, is the montage of you and Ram sleeping anywhere you could, no matter where it was.
Yeah.
Was there anything that you were surprised to find caught on camera?
No, not
No.
really. They were always there.
They were always there.
So yeah, I was, yeah. But it's really, I mean, even just watching that, I don't know, if you're interested in making movies, or if you have kids who are interested in making movies and who love Star Wars, I think that's another reason we wanted to do this. Is I remember when I was a kid, there was a TV special, there was a behind-the-scenes thing on Return of the Jedi that had all the creatures in Jabba's palace. And I remember, or Raiders had an amazing behind-the-scenes thing that showed how they put together the truck chase. And I remember watching that as a kid, and that bridging the gap between this extraordinary thing I was experiencing with these movies and, oh my God, there are people who actually make these. And that's what we wanted to get to in this. And yeah, I'm really proud of the doc crew. I feel like I feel like they got that.
One of the really amazing things to see in the doc are the number of critters that you came up with that didn't make it into the final cut. What was that like? What was it like coming up with? You can create the big wide world of galaxy when you're thinking of making a Star Wars movie, and then you're bumped up against the logistics of like budget or timing or something like that, and that's Ram's job sort of to tell you no. But you know, what is it like sort of reconciling your artistic vision with the practicalities of making this film?
Well, there's our Tom Karnowski, who is our line producer, has like a really good line in the doc where he says, at the end of the day, we have to fit all this into a box, which is our budget. And he says it's a very big box. Like, it's such a big box, you can never complain about the size of the box. But it is still a box. Like, it is still something you have to figure out how to work within restraints. And even more so than money or budget, it's time and resources. It's just figuring out how much you can accomplish. But I don't know, at the end of the day, though, you're focused just on the story, on the characters, and on making that work, and everything else is great, but if you have to lose some of it, as long as you're getting the heart of it right, then that's really all that matters. Yeah.
Is there ever, you know, speaking of budget, is there ever a time when you're making something this big, this massive, with so many zeros at the end of the budget, do you ever miss the days of like Brick, where you have to maybe be even more creative with what you can do on a shoestring, versus like some creatives say that they like those limits, and that the great wide world of possibility of big budget is sort of intimidating or overwhelming. Do you ever like miss making a shot with $5 or something?
No. No, there's no. I don't know, because you always have. The thing is, you have limits with this too, and you have restrictions, and you have to think on your feet. They're just different restrictions, I guess.
Yeah.
And it's not to say that I would never go back to doing like small stuff. I'm very sure I will someday. But no, because ultimately I feel like the restrictions are the real thing you butt up against is just making it work, making the heart of it work, like I talked about before, you know. And ultimately at the end of the day, it's I mean, Kathy has a great phrase that she says, where she says, you know, it's just more zeros. And when you're making it, it's kind of honestly true. It's like you may have all the resources in the world, that does make things very easier in a lot of ways, but at the end of the day, what the movie lives or dies by doesn't have much to do with those zeros, and it still is just as hard to get as when you're making a $500,000 indie movie, which is the performances, the characters, and telling that story, you know.
There's a really lovely moment, or a few moments in the doc. You already talked about working with Carrie a little bit, but all the Carrie moments in the doc are really touching. And I was wondering, did Carrie get to see any of the final film?
No, not the final film. The most that I got to watch with her was at Pinewood. We did, while we were shooting, a little bit of ADR with her, just additional dialogue recording. And so I sat with her and we watched, I can't remember what scene it was, but we watched one of the scenes and she recorded the lines. And then afterwards, I was a little like, what do you think? And yeah, it was interesting. I mean, I remember her talking about, because it was hard for her to watch herself on screen. I don't think that she, she's, at heart, she's a writer. And especially in this and in Force Awakens, she told me, she thinks about like she's just like friends with Meryl Streep. She talks about Meryl Streep like making movies consistently as she's gotten older. And so seeing herself on the screen kind of get older. And for Carrie, because she didn't do that, because she hasn't been, there's been large gaps where she just wasn't up on the screen.
Yeah.
I remember her telling me, in my head, I'm still in my 20s, and so there's always going to be that disconnect with seeing yourself on the screen. And but I think at heart I think she's a wonderful performer. I think she gives a beautiful performance in this. I think in her heart, she's a writer, and I know that's how I connected with her.
Some of my favorite things around the movie, sort of the publicity-wise, are these behind-the-scenes footage of you guys talking, images, photos you've taken on the set of her. And I know you're fond, like everyone knows, right, that Ryan carries his camera around everywhere. Was there a photo that you took on set that maybe people haven't seen yet?
There's a bunch of them. I took honestly, I took like 3,000 stills. And
so we're going to show all 3,000?
All 3,000,
yeah.
Settle in. We're going to get them out there in some shape or form at some point. We have one here that's my favorite that I could never show to anyone before the end of the shoot. And I love it just because, and this is part of what the doc does also, is just the fun that we had on set. I don't know, it was we all just had a really good time, and we were goofing off even when the Supreme Leader is bisected in the background there. Daisy's still probably laughing at a fart joke that our first AD just made. So.
Yeah, there's this great section of the doc where, you're filming that amazing throne room scene, which is my favorite part of the film. I've heard it can play out to any song you could ever think of. Right?
I've seen some of that on the. That's pretty cool.
Do you have a favorite?
Oh no, that every single one of them. But you know what? We discovered that in the editing room, when Bob my editor and I would get bored, we would play one of the space battles, but I'd have him stick like a Steve Miller track under it. And I was like, oh, it's Guardians. Yeah, it feels like Guardians. So, but no, I'm looking forward to, once people get it in 4K, seeing the remixes that happen.
Yeah, the actual clear footage. Yeah. And then, I guess I just wish that we could get maybe someone else's perspective of what it was like on the set, but it's just you here, right? That's what I was told.
We might have one more thing. We have one more thing here. Yeah.
Do we?
Should we bring him out?
I think so.
Let's bring him out. Let's bring out Mark Hamill. Come on.
Is this... Wait a minute. Listen, no, please sit down. An honor to be here at the Salute to Corvette Summer, so thank you for coming. A very underappreciated film.
Are we
going to move down?
Take the pole position. This is just like the Tonight Show.
I feel like Bob Hope walking on. So,
hello.
This is just a cameo at the end, which I'm very good at.
We missed a shot. We should have just had you come out. Yeah.
With actual dialogue.
Yeah, the point was for you to not say anything, right?
That would have been good. I should have thought of that.
Or just throw our water away or something like that.
Yes.
What was the experience like watching the documentary this morning?
Well,
a big crowd.
well, first of all, it's great for the incredible talent behind the scenes to get their due credit. I mean, because of the episodic nature of the film, I had lots of time off, and I loved going to all the different departments and seeing them, putting feather by feather the porgs together. They put that Chewie costume hair by hair. Mm-hmm. I don't know how they did it, but the weapons department, the creature shop. I mean, for somebody that loves movies, to have a pass to be able to visit every department was just a thrill. So yeah, I had a great time, despite how somber the subject matter was.
Sure.
I mean, it says right in the script, forget the past, kill it if you have to. You're doing a pretty good job.
I'm trying. I'm trying.
In fact, I said to Carrie, I said, if this is a pattern, unless you're a token survivor, you're next in 9. And she made some remark about, well, at least I won't be glowing green. But it's hard watching the documentary because, to me, she's still here.
Yeah.
Her personality was so strong. I didn't see her with great frequency, but when we were together, you just fell back into that. There was a comfort level that we'd achieved.
Yeah.
She knew I wasn't trying to get anything out of her. I mean, she could just relax and be herself. And that was my memory mostly, because I would come out to the studio, even if I wasn't shooting, to do, stunt training or whatever, make a beeline to her trailer and just hang out, because it was impossible not to have fun and laugh. And I could make her laugh, which is one of my badges of honor, because she was effortlessly funny, and it was great. I mean, we'd look at each other and go, can you believe we're back here doing Star Wars movies again? Weird Al Yankovic wrote a song about it, Now we're making him prophetic, so. But, like Ryan said, everybody is so happy to be there. Every department, from the people who cater the lunches to wardrobe and hair and the grips and everybody, it's, they're just so happy. And they're like a family because you spend more time than you do with your actual family.
There's this great sequence in the documentary where you're stunt training for your big fights, a couple of your big fights
Right.
that you have. What was that like? What was the stunt training, dodging staffs and all of that?
Well, in the early days, I said I want to do everything myself.
Yeah.
I don't want Colin Skeeping, who was my stunt double in the original trilogy. He only came on Empire and Jedi. I don't think he was in Star Wars. I didn't have to do that much physically, but of course, fast forward to anything that you can get away without me doing, I want the stunt guy to do it. Not because I'm lazy, it's because they're so good at what they do. And Nick Choppers was my stunt double on this one, and the fantastic support you have. I mean, for instance, the guy that was stunt training me, I get really frustrated because they choreograph it like a dance, and you do it over and over and over and over. I've only done one Broadway musical, but it was like the hardest thing I'd ever done because it's not in my DNA. And if you make a mistake, you have to go back to the beginning and start from, on Broadway, the choreographer would blow a whistle and she'd make us go back. But
was there a whistle? Did Ryan?
No. What I'm saying in this one, because there would be the sequences, and I would always beat myself up. Oh gosh, darn it, And we had somebody that was so funny. He would just make a joke of it, and that's the perfect way with me because it takes the pressure off when you laugh. You can't get too upset when you're laughing.
What was it like watching sort of this conversation that you and Ryan had about the direction for Luke? What was it like watching that play out on the documentary?
The discussion about the character?
Yeah, about Luke the character.
Well, I've said before, I wish I hadn't expressed my insecurities publicly, because that usually is internal, and you keep it in rehearsal and so forth. Because look, once I was able to be completely honest with Ryan about, I said, I don't want to harbor these misgivings. I want to lay my cards out on the table so that I can just get it off my chest and then throw it all away. Like this is the first time I've ever played Luke. I had to do it that way because, I'm sort of old school, stuck in the George Lucas era, and this is the next generation where the kids are doing all the heavy lifting. I used to be the hotshot pilot, and now we've got Poe, Oscar Isaac. I used to be the kid from nowhere that's discovering this inner power, and now we have Rey. So, it has to grow. It can't, reunions are inherently disappointing You know, aren't they? I mean, your old TV show, they go, oh boy, they're coming back after 20 years. And then you see, I'm not sure this wasn't such a great idea. You know, because despite the fact that my first reaction was, can't we push this off until 9? You know, I said earlier, I don't want to repeat myself, I only asked for 2 things, no cameos and a run of the trilogy part. See how well that worked out for me? But in a way, I could take cues from Luke, because Luke eventually does the right thing selflessly for the good of the Rebel Alliance, and Mark should do the selfless thing for the betterment of the movie. You know, seriously, I mean, no. I'm not trying to be self-aggrandizing. I'm just saying in the greater scope of things. Number one, I never expected to come back. So this is all like found money. You know, when you, when you pull out that pair of trousers from the back of the closet, you find a $20 bill in the pocket, you go, wow, this is like worth more than $20 because I didn't know I had it. Who knew there was a Jedi pension plan? So listen, you know, I had so much satisfaction with the original trilogy, and I had a beginning, a middle, and an end, and I was looking forward to the new Star Wars films without me. You know, I mean, I loved Rogue One because it had 100% less me. Because you can relax, you can enjoy it like an audience member rather than what John Boyega talks about in the documentary is the pressure. I mean, even if you outwardly are okay and having fun, there is that pressure that, you know, because it's like almost too big for comfort. You know, that's why I love Brigsby Bear. It was a small movie about little people with big ideas, and it was so original. Don't you think? I mean, normally when you read a script, you go, they say, what's it like? I say, oh, we're trapped in a submarine, this organism grows and starts. It's sort of Alien meets Run Silent, Run Deep. You always compare this with this. But yeah, you look for scripts that are highly original, and that's why I thought Last Jedi was incredibly daring, you know? I mean, because I remember one thing that was very informative to me, because I would say like, you know, but we really have to think of what the audience expects and what they want. And he says, no, we have to do the opposite. We have to give them something they don't expect that we want.
Wow.
He's always right. He's always right. In other words,
the annoying thing about
when I do
right?
the little brush offs, now see, when I did that, he'd always do this. I'd say, let me do something, and I want to try something. He says, okay, try it your way. So we do it that way. And he goes, okay, now let's do one like in the script. Which is like code for, guess which one we're going to do. But he was always right. Like when I did the brush off, I did it brush. So I was sort of mimicking the Barack Obama.
Yeah.
And he said, you know, I don't know if he said this, but he said 1 because 2 would be overkill. And again, he was right. So, you know, I had lots of horrible ideas. Remember I told you about, you know, after Kylo realizes that I'm a hologram, I said I should start growing 10 feet, then 20 feet, then 30 feet, then 40 feet, and then start, you know, stomping on AT-ATs and all that. You know, at the time, I thought this is a really good idea. And about 10 days later, I'm trying to go to sleep, and I'm thinking, did I really say that to Ryan? Oh, that's horrible. I think I had, you know, inner, like, Godzilla aspiration. I just wanted to be stomping model AT-ATs.
I want to see that movie.
Yeah, right?
No, I just thought it'd be a good idea as a flourish. Just scare the shit out of the First Order as I leave, you know, with, you know, people panicking and running away from me in my
Picking
way.
up Hux like Fay Ray, undressing.
Exactly. So at the time, it seemed like a good idea.
Well, you talk about reunions being inherently disappointing, but I think everyone agrees that the scene between you and Carrie in The Last Jedi, which we see in the documentary, is far from disappointing. It's
Well, that's the
incredible.
scene when I see the film, it just takes me totally out of the film. It'll take me a while to get over that. And I started making the emotional disconnect that I need to go through when I read 7. Not the fact that I was just in at the end, the fact when I realized, oh my gosh, I'll never get to work with Harrison Ford again. That was the first big disconnect. Then the second one was, realizing that, thinking that they'd kill me off in 9, that they were going to, speed it up a little, get rid of the old fogies and focus on the new gang. And then I relished the fact that I had at least a scene with Carrie. Because I kept saying, why would Luke turn off his telepathic powers with his sister? I can see him giving up It's ironic that the person who's most like-minded in the whole movie as Luke is DJ, Benicio
Del
I mean,
Toro,
But see what I'm saying, they both reached the conclusion that war is completely futile. And Luke goes away to an island, DJ decides to cash in on it. But there's lots of really complex ideas. I've only seen it 4 times, and each time you get something new from it. And it's extraordinary in that way. But then what happened with Carrie in real life, so that was so devastating that you go, wow, we'll never get the band back together. So I'm really good with the fact that, I had a wonderful entrance in 7 and I had a wonderful exit in 8. I couldn't ask for anything more.
Right.
Except merchandising rights. No, they give me free passes to Disneyland.
10% off at Disney stores.
I get discounts galore.
Ryan, what was it like for you directing a scene with General Leia and Luke Skywalker?
Well, I remember, because our set was so happy and goofing around and just jovial and just it felt like most of the time. And on that day, and nobody requested, let's everyone be serious, but that day everyone showed up for work and it was like church on the set. When you see in the doc, you can feel, I think, that atmosphere. And that's really how I remember it feeling on set. Nobody talked. It was just very quiet and respectful. To give Mark and Carrie the space that they needed to have this scene. And
I didn't plan to give a kiss on the forehead.
Well, yeah, and that was the kiss on the forehead was Mark. That was something when we were rehearsing. Yeah. And he was just like, I feel like I want to do this, and it was so perfect.
But that's how accommodating he is. I said, you know what? It's a small thing, but originally I didn't acknowledge 3PO at all. I just walked by him. I said, I can't do that. Look at he's been a faithful servant all these years, especially under those circumstances, because the concept of a 3PO is it just tickles me so much, because he'd rather be, serving champagne at an opera than riding. I've forgotten how much I abhor space travel. Come on, that's just funny to me.
I forgot that we added that.
Yeah, he said, well, then go over and acknowledge him, and
when you have good ideas, I use them.
Well, there you go. Okay. I'm good with the wink, not so much on Godzilla stuff.
So we have some questions that you guys submitted through the Slido app to ask. I believe probably when you guys submitted them, you maybe didn't know Mark was going to be here, so I think most of them are for Ryan. But Mark, feel free to answer as if you
It's
were
Mark
Ryan.
at Hamill himself. He said, shamelessly pandering for more Twitter followers.
Right, what we decided...
No, seriously, it's like dad jokes and retweets of cute animal videos. You'll love it.
I think we decided backstage that Mark's goal for 2018 is to beat Justin Bieber's following, right?
Well, I know. I was bragging to my son. I said, I passed 2 million followers. And he said, Dad, Justin Bieber has 47 million. I thought, I stand corrected. Does he do dad jokes?
Yeah. So hashtag beat Bieber in 2018, I think, is the campaign. But we're gonna start with a question for Ryan that he probably can't answer. So here we go. Since you are not writing or directing episode 9, what's one thing you want to see happen as a fan, if you can't speak specifics, a character or plotline?
I feel like I would be the biggest hypocrite in the world if I said, if this doesn't happen in 9, then I'm out. But the truth is, what I honestly want is the same thing I want from every movie. I want to be, surprised. I don't want to come up with something in my head that I want to happen and see that happen. I want to see what JJ and Chris Terrio are going to write. I'm
Any
so
chance
excited to see how
Luke
this
just
ends.
force projected to somewhere?
I like the idea of him, like, at the beginning of 9, the scroll goes away, we pan down, modern-day New York, and Luke appears.
Yes.
Now,
Like
see,
in front
that
of Trump
would be
Tower?
Surprising. I'm at Nathan's eating a hot dog.
So, Lucasfilm was so happy with The Last Jedi, they decided to put a ring on it and commit Ryan for making another trilogy. So I know you can't tell, this question comes from Jordan, but it's a question I want to ask too. I know you can't tell us much, but are there themes or ideas you're excited to explore in your own Star Wars stories outside of the Skywalker timeline? What can you tell us?
Oh, I can tell you nothing!
That's what I thought.
No,
But
not because I'm being coy, but really because I'm just still at the beginning of the process. I'm figuring it all out. I can tell you I'm very excited. How about that?
Will anybody grow to Godzilla size?
Possibly, now.
That's all I want. No, finally it won't be about, because
I'm
everyone
gonna do
said,
it.
oh, so in the end, Star Wars is about family. Yeah, the dysfunctional Skywalker family. That must be a burden off you to not
I just
have
got to
to
come
write
up with
about
another
our
dysfunctional family.
Sorry,
Yeah.
family.
This next question comes from Anonymous, my favorite name. And I think this is actually one Mark might be more comfortable answering than Ryan, which is, if you could go back in time and tweak anything of the previous Star Wars movies, what would it be?
2 swipes.
Lukezilla.
No, I mean, you can't do that. I mean, one of the things that's interesting is that when I'm actually making the movie, I am so there, I'm so committed, and I really am adamant about, doing the best I can. But once it's out of my hands and there's nothing I can do about it, you just let it go. You let it go. I mean, that's why I haven't seen the original. I saw the original trilogies when they re-released them in 97 or 98. And even then, I said, oh, good, send me a screener. I want to see what the special editions look like. And my kids went, Dad, no, we got to see them on the big screen. I thought, oh, my gosh, yeah. Here's a whole generation that have only seen them on home video. So we went and saw them. But, that's why the fans know so much more of the minutia than I do. Because they correct me all the time, I say, the medical droid, oh, it's whatever, IG-88. The thing they have to understand, a lot of these things weren't named when we made the movie. We called it the dustbin robot, or because it looked like a walking trash can. It didn't get a name until Kenner had to copyright the name of the toy. So then it became, IG-88 or whatever, so... And like I say, I mean, they've read the novels, which I've never done. I don't know anything about the extended universe. Someone told me about Mara Jade. They said, hey, look, you have a hot redheaded wife. I said, fine, I get a girlfriend 20 years after I stopped making the movie. Like a good news, bad news joke. The good news is there's one really attractive woman in the galaxy. Bad news, she's your sister.
This question I think comes from a real Ryan scholar, because I haven't thought about this, but Aurora writes that she says your film had a lot of screen time dedicated to hands-touching meeting, including that really sexy finger touch between Kylo and Rey. Was this intentional? If so, what were you hoping to convey with these scenes?
That's really interesting, actually. Yeah, I don't know.
You blew Ryan's mind, Aurora.
Yeah, no kidding. That's really observant. I mean, I guess the easy dumb answer is just that you're always, especially with the scope of a movie like this, you're always trying to nail the intimacy. You're always trying to make it intimate, make it personal, make it just this to this, which honestly is part of the reason why. I mean, we talked about, even with the Godzilla thing, not even that idea specifically, but the notion of Luke doing some massive, goes like this, and all the AT-ATs blow away or something like that. I mean, that was.
Let me do that.
No, I would not. I'm about to explain why.
And just do a look, and I said, "Oh, good, he's going to make 5,000 stormtroopers fly." But that's what I mean. You're so collaborative that, unless you were just, humoring me.
Never. So, but
I wouldn't blame you if you did. I know my own family does.
But you're always, there's always that tempting, big, huge version, and then I feel like it's always more satisfying if you can get a satisfying beat out of the intimate and the one-on-one and just Luke and his nephew and this moment between the two of them, and let's not go any bigger than that. It's about that. So as scene by scene, and maybe that's why the ultimate expression of that is just focusing on even tighter on just contact, and that, to me, that's one of my favorite shots in the movie, just those two fingers touching. It's the closest thing we'll get to a sex scene in a Star Wars movie, probably.
So far, so far.
I didn't even get that. I would have loved to have touched a finger, but no. Mara Jade, no finger touching.
I mean, you got to smooch your sister.
You did get to kiss your sister.
You got to smooch your sister.
Yeah,
so. This is another, I think it's the same question for Jordan. I don't mean to play favoritism, but in watching the documentary, there's this great spa scene at the casino that I think doesn't make it at all into the final film, right? Where you get Warwick Davis in a fun suit. You put Warwick Davis in a suit and didn't put it into the film, so that's
he's in there, and he's in the casino.
Yeah, in a different So Jordan asked, in hindsight, is there anything you wish you could have put into the movie but didn't or couldn't?
Oh, there's so much. I mean, that's one of the nice things about the home video release. But no, not just selling Blu-rays. Honestly, there's so much stuff that we cut out that the movie is better for it not being there. Not because it was bad, just because it's a thing where you're shaping this bigger thing, and if something takes too long, or you need to connect two things that were previously split apart, some stuff just has to go. But we have over 20 minutes of really good actual scenes that were cut out that we were able to just put on the
casino set alone.
There's just so much stuff.
150 extras with animatronic puppets and stuff. I mean, because you could go around and inspect all of these things, and it's just presented as a matter-of-fact blow-away. That must have been the most opulent set I've ever been on.
Yeah, that was nuts.
In my life. I don't know what that cost, but gee whiz.
And I guess I'll end with a fun. This will forever haunt you. Whatever decision you make right now, everyone will remember it. Which is, who's your favorite Star Wars character of all time?
Luke Skywalker.
I think it's Luke Skywalker too.
Luke Skywalker.
Yeah.
Oh, come on.
It's true. It's true. It's genuinely true.
I read the original, people don't know, I got the part not having read the script. I just read a 12-page, screen test, and I couldn't figure it out. When I finally got the script, and before all the secrecy, I started giving it to my friends to read, And I gave it to my friend Jonathan, and I said, this is the goofiest thing I've ever read. You got to read this. And then he called, he said, you're right, it's goofy as hell. Can I give it to Meredith? I said, sure. I passed it all around because nobody cared.
Oh, wow. One of my favorite parts of the documentary is when Ryan tells you the name of the movie and he says, don't tell Mary Lou, it's your wife, right? Don't even tell her.
And I know you told her. I know you.
We know you told her.
My daughter,
Mary Lou, we know you.
Chelsea said,
I'm
is
surprised.
it The Last Jedi? And
Yeah.
I have a good poker face. I said, well, you have to wait and see. And then I later went, how did that was amazing.
I'm surprised more people didn't guess it, actually.
Oh, well, I didn't think they'd use Jedi, because I used to call them Star Wars Empire Jedi. Now I got to, what am I going to call this one?
Last. Call it last.
Yeah.
Call it the.
Yeah. Episode 9, The Last Paycheck.
We're gonna end on. I think we're gonna end on that. Yep, that's it. On that one-liner. Thank you all so much for coming.
Thank you guys.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.